Good evening. Welcome to Defacto Review, a weekly roundup of news and current affairs here in Mongolia, with our commentator and economist, General Defacto.
Good evening.
And I'm Anand Tumurta. You can watch us live on Facebook on MMB World, and you can join in the conversation on Twitter with the hashtag #Defacto. Today in our program, Spring Parliament session has started, but the minority party demands Parliament to dissolve for incompetency. Will Parliament dissolve? Asian Development Bank believes despite the progress in the banking sector, continuing the banking fragility poses a risk to the economic health. Has Mongol Bank been able to monitor the banking sector independently? Misinformation on Facebook is a global issue, and Mongolia is no exception. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs initiated a peaceful conference to combat fake news on the platform. And for our first topic, the spring session has started and the Parliament was held on Friday. The Speaker announced that on the spring session, Parliament will discuss issues that grab the interest of the public, like the torture case issues and the constitutional amendments and other policy matters. And on the opening day of the session, the Democratic Party held a protest rally on Sekpatra Square calling for the Parliament's dissolution. The members of the Democratic Party from all corners of the country were present at the rally. So on to the questions. So the Speaker of Parliament stated that the implementation of the Criminal Code of Conduct and the status of human rights and freedoms in Mongolia will be discussed in a debate format. How will basically Parliament implement this? Well, can they do this basically?
Well, issue is not format. Issue is what will be the result. Because by today it's clear that Mongolia had been torturing people in prison. Mm-hmm. And yet people have in democratic country a right to have just judicial service, right? Including
yes.
fair court. So who is going to fight? Who is going to defend the interests of people in prison? We were expecting that is to be done by Human Rights Commission, mm-hmm. which was not the case. So probably they are now discussing about how to improve that agency commission work so that it is not repeated again. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, what is done so far is they have changed the law to replace the general prosecutor, general judge,
yes,
and the head of the implementation agency of implementing court decisions. So these three figures were not possible to change without amending that related laws, which is being criticized, but however it was made to have the necessary step to change these people, who are now replaced by their successors. For example, the general prosecutor now, Mr. Damden Tsering, is a person who has been working in this organization for all his career. Mm-hmm. And last two nominees, the last two prosecutors were more political nominees. Mm-hmm. So people inside of the prosecutor office is very happy. And this new prosecutor said that he will make sure he will combat with that torture in prisons. So this sort of things to be confirmed in his action, for example, to be implemented under these questions you have just now asked.
Mm-hmm. But the overall concern, as you said, people criticize this decisions. The blatant criticism is that so this implementation came in, but who will basically have an oversight over the president and the speaker and also the prime minister? Because
I think it is a part of also of a new constitution's amendment to make sure that these three powers are in balance. And in other case, maybe they will be reconsidering again that law they have made just now amended. So probably they will somehow to go back to square number one, somehow. Otherwise, your question is very correct.
And will the parliament be able to have an amendment to the constitution that will allow independence of the courts and the judiciary, basically?
Yeah, not only that, but as there are several other issues pending, our life under this constitution has proved there are provisions we need to change. I think on that amendments, two political parties, present office, are all agree that they will make the amendments. But the issue is with the current parliament or the next one, because an issue comes, though, you know, the current parliament has a power to change, as one party has 65 seats out
Yes,
of
they do.
76 seats. And probably we will not have any more the sort of power in one political party anymore in the country. So while they have this advantage, they have opportunity to change. But the question comes whether this parliament, the members of the parliaments, have moral right to have amendments or not, since they are just in case of the bad use of or wrong use of the fund for supporting small and medium enterprises. Yes. Many of them got the money through their own companies. Yes. Very much discounted loan, 3% on the loan in the country where the majority receives their loan above 60.9% on the average. But they can do it if the president is supporting. And we are expecting the president is to support that. Then issue comes, how much will be the change, power change for the president office itself? So the rumor is now, the people are talking about the changing, for example, the terms of the president, not to be two as now, but one. And the minimum age of the presidency to be 54 years old. So minimum 4 years old, a guy can be a president or a woman. But then only 6 years, one term, then the person is retiring and is not doing any more political works. That's the one line discussing now. The other line is maybe to have two chambers of parliament. One chamber is represented by maybe over 1,000 people from each Samong in the country. And maybe they can get once a year get together assembly, and then we have a full-time working parliament chamber of like almost the current one, but with a little bit more members, say 99, 96 members. So this sort of things, discussions going on, and within these discussions, probably they will reconsider again the provision you have raised in the first questions.
And if the term limits of the president will change, if it changes, the president probably might not like that. And concerning about the torture case and also the changing of the courts and the ruling party does not have a very good leg to stand on. And is there a lack of political leadership to consolidate the will of the people concerning the torture case and the corruption allegations? And does the Democratic Party have the potential to lead on this issue?
Yeah, we have a lack of leadership in two political parties. Yeah. More or less now, People's Party are now more or less experiencing that. Yes. And Prime Minister Hurisuh is leading that major fight against corruption through replacing this court and other enforcement agencies' heads. And good luck. And he is still a lot to go. And the expectation is now, from next week, they will change the city prosecutor who was against many cases that the parliament and government finds corrupt. So we will have more further interesting actions next week, I understand. And as far as Democratic Party concerned, this party was a part of all this change. In particular, these three people we just recently replaced were nominated by initiative of the president, who is from this party. And many wrongdoings we cannot separate also from the Democratic Party when they were in the power for last term until 2016,
Yes.
during which many things happened now against we are fighting now. Corruptions cases, and public money misuse. So Mongolians are now looking for 2020 elections to have an account with these two political parties. So it depends on their faith will depend on whether they can reform the leadership, their integrity during the remaining time, which is very short now,
Yes,
15 or so months.
yes. What should the people expect from the last year of this parliament, basically?
Of course, we expect them to reverse their interests now, put our interest first, then their own interests. And many of them know already that they will not be re-elected because many of them are connected with this embezzlement of fund.
Yes.
First. Secondly, they need to complete this reform in judicial system where the corrupt leaders were allowing that actions like torture, that actions like corruptions. Many major corruption cases are being discussed mostly like a rumor. There were several arrests, but nobody had went to the court. Without court decisions, these corruption cases files are open. Still, the people are waiting for many things. And these two political parties were so much intervened with each other, so much keeping each other as a collateral. So it's very hard to go within this framework, political framework, to go after many the corruption cases, which somehow this current prime minister is trying to address, along with the speaker, who was before he was the head of the cabinet.
Maybe
head of the chancellery of the cabinet.
Maybe a shift in rule of party. Maybe a different party should come into the fray and become part of the parliament, basically.
Whatever they do, the people expect to be compensated with our losses of our land they have been speculating, properties they have been misusing. One thing is to have a court, and our court usually makes some sentences to the people who are at fault. But people need more than that. We want to get back our lost property. Now, for example, last week, they paid $40 million for this bank, Standard Bank in South Africa. And that $40 million should be paid by those who have misused our property, names, lands. So that's what the people expect from this current political system.
Okay. And moving on from that, our second topic. The Asian Development Bank has released a report on the Mongolian economic outlook on April 3rd. It is anticipated that economic growth will reach 6.7% in 2019 and 6.3% in 2020. Mongol Bank also introduced its quarterly inflation forecast for the first quarter of this year, and Mongol Bank introduced the key macroeconomic indicators that inflation is expected to stabilize in the near term. My question is that what is your take on Mongol Bank's report and Asian Development Bank's outlook for this year?
Mongol Bank report was about the first quarter economic performance of the country. There are some good news, relatively. Inflation 7.3. In normal economy, it used to be 2 or 3. But in our economy, 7.3. Also, extension of investment in the country for last year increased compared with the previous one, 27%, which is good news. The other thing is country's currency reserve, foreign currency reserve, came to the level of 3.6 billion, which was only 1 billion at the end of 2016. The other thing was state budget was positive, no deficit for last year, and the current balance payment had also surplus, and the ranking of the country have increased, and what for last year, average credit interest rate came to the level 16.9% compared with 20% a year before.
Yes.
Which is still itself very high. 16.9% for business is very high. It's very few business can survive.
Yes.
That's why we see the shrinking of the private sector, unfortunately, which is supposed to be the backbone of the economy. However, 2018 experienced a 24% extension of credit, which is good news. A year before, it was 5% shrinkage. So this sort of readings you can see from the Mongol Bank report for the last quarter. ADB, being one of the major player in the economy, along with the World Bank, they have been forecasting the economy. I mean, today they're expecting this year to be 6.7% growth. Next year, a year after a year of election, 6.7%. 6.7% this year, 6.4% next year.
Yes.
And this year also we will have increase of prices for electricity, 13.5% from this month, and also for heating, 10% increase, which is good for having more better economy in this sector. It's the special state dominant sector where the price is controlled by the state. ADB says that overall the economy looks better, but we still need to pay more attention to the banking sector.
Yeah, and it also, the Mongol banks also projected that things are getting better. But as you said, ADB believes that banking sector is at risk for the economy. Like there's a fragility in the banking sector, and what should we be done to prevent this risk, basically?
Banking sector is fragile, according to ADB, and in fact, this IMF conditions for $5.5 billion fund from the donor countries.
Yes.
Sorry for that. It was a condition where all banking assets of the country are checked, EQR, asset quality report to be made. It's made. Head of Mongol Bank said it's okay, better than expected.
But has the Mongol Bank been able to monitor those independently without any political influence?
It was checked by independent auditing company. We haven't seen the report, but the head of the bank says okay. But then there was more need to increase the capitalization of Mongolian banks. In fact, this 16.9% shows that there is a big demand for loan. Because of big demand, the supply is, increasing prices also on the other side. So Mongol Bank says Mongol Bank now must have another auditing report about that capitalization of Mongolian commercial banks. They said it is done by the end of last year. Now it's more capitalist enough, they say, but it is to be also verified by independent also auditing company. That's what is missing now. If it is coming out, and it is turned out that, for example, if it is turned out that all banks are doing all, because you see, we talk about the new qualification or classification of the bad banking loans, because depending on the terms, if they are correctly classified, they will be covered differently by the fund of risk here, which will give at least a more healthy asset on this side and more infusion to the owner's equity. So that's what is expected. If it is done correctly, it's okay. So that's what is expectation, to have less fragility in banking sector for next year. So that's what is expecting actually. Then what happens is IMF, this $2.5 billion pending assistance to Mongolia are to come. It is to come only upon approval of by the board of IMF, saying or stating that Mongolia has been doing and all things what we have agreed. So for economies, they say good, no deficit. The budget, the revenue have increased, no deficit in budget for last year, and this year looks good. So relatively, economy is better. Investors' confidence are coming back. That's what they basically says the ADB report.
Well, the bank says there's good progress, but what do you think the current economic situation is? Has it been getting better, or is there some kind of issues there? Because in my concern, or some people would say that yes, the Mongolian economy has been rising. It's a lot of good progress, but people don't feel that at all.
Well, it's also partially a bit to do with the Mongol Bank. Mongol Bank has still a lot loss, $3 billion loss the end of 2016, and now it is decreased by 1 billion. Let's talk one. It was 3 trillion Tugriks loss. Now it's 2 trillion Tugriks loss, decreasing. But still, Mongol Bank is running with the loss, and it's also because it has been running a bank like a state government budget team, issuing new programs, like this discount mortgage program, and also price stabilization program. Tons of money was issued, and now all the money is staying in the balance of Mongol Bank and bringing more losses. And this is, they call it non-traditional approach. So this is depends on how Mongol Bank will solve that part. And secondly, also Mongol Bank is very much, I understand, under the pressure to have more interventions to keep US dollar and Tugrik ratio stable, and which they cannot do with bigger size. But unfortunately, there are forces, I understand, to do so, 1 million, 100 million, 50 million, etc., to keep that rate. But for long run, they should not do it that much, because it was the mistake of the previous one, because it's big amount, very frequent intervention. In terms of economy outlook for me, as I see, Mongolia, we depend on the price of two things, copper and coal that China buys price. So this year things look not that bad. So maybe things will go along with how this ADB is describing. But along with that, if the state is not to be increasing its expenses, they should have also no deficit of budget. That means the expenses of the budget to be on target, not increasing many other funds through which they find New Zealand's way of spending money. The third important thing is the economic competitiveness of Mongolian private sector, which is only possible when the state controls less the price, when the state-owned enterprise to be smaller, not bigger as we do now. Because with the more state-owned enterprises, we have a more problem. We're losing funds, and it should be more mostly state-owned. It should be shareholders-owned company, so that we don't have mismanagement there, as we have them a lot with the state-owned enterprises. And of course, less corruption. Then the economy will go as we expect.
Well, hopefully that will happen. Okay, moving on to our last topic. The Peaceful Forum, which is initiated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Mongolia, Tokhtpatra. The conference was the first to promote the peace and an understanding throughout the world, especially young people of Mongolia. The representatives from the government and NGOs, foreign affiliates, private sectors, and media outlets participated in the conference. You also partook in this conference. What do you think of this conference? What should be done to have basically a peace book and a peaceful environment on social media?
I was so excited because it's a very good thing. Can you imagine we have made Facebook into a peace book? Because when we talk about the peace, it is this initiative came from a foreign minister of a small country like Mongolia, because we are not that small in the virtual world. It turned out we have twice more. That many accounts, social accounts, in the country.
I think we are very prominent on Twitter also, yes.
Yeah, per capita, probably
Yes.
one of the leading. It's good. Our foreign minister visited. I met the guy, the person from Facebook, the regional head, Mr. Chen, who said that our foreign minister is the first cabinet minister visiting Facebook, and they have. He went to this is nearby Stanford, I understand, in California. And the idea is very marvelous because truly our communication should be creating pieces rather than connecting us, not dividing us as is now is happening. And I think we should tolerate our political and religious differences all around the world. And Mongolia is putting out a new initiative in that regard, which is wonderful. And and I think if it is done, implemented, then we will make substantial steps towards better world, peaceful world, more understanding, less hatred, and less checking at the airport, by the way. So.
Well, yeah, and social media on Facebook, there's a lot of spreading of misinformation, especially of using misleading information to intended to influence elections, has taken root in not only in Mongolia but throughout the world, basically. And is there a way to control this misinformation, or should we even control it? Actually, should we even control this misinformation?
Yeah, what is my take on that? I have 205,000 Twitter followers and 53 Facebook followers. So I feel every day this kind of how terrible is that you receive comments or somebody commenting on somebody from the account which has no name and no photo and no face, no name, no.
Give big criticisms.
No shame,
Yeah.
And the best thing is to ignore them.
That's
what I advise. Instead of cutting, like in many countries, they are through the control, they are cutting all the lines, and even social media is forbidden in some countries. Instead of that, I feel everybody is ignoring and reporting every account that has no name, no face, which I do. You know what happens? Then these people who by doing bad comments, that makes the war terrible, they want to be famous. If you ignore them, report them as offensive, then there will be nobody as who they are. So that's what I appeal instead of all Mongolians who use a social account, ignore, delete, report those who has no name and face. And don't try to control, like many other governments, social media, because then we will lose many positive things that social media brought to our life and brings us together. And by the way, this positive impact way larger than negative impact.
So, okay, on that note, can you sum up? Basically, there was a saying. There was some analysts say that that the northern neighbors basically use social media to influence our previous elections. And has the government looked into this matter? Can you sum it up?
I don't know whether government looked at that, and also we need very clear evidence that Russia had was intervening into our election. We don't know that, but America knows. At least says and proves that there's so many accounts trolls coming from Russia to impact on the Russian elections.
On every
election. Yes. And also the Americans say that China has a particular place. They even say which place from which they are trying to attack government websites in America. So it is a game in between bigger countries, our big neighbors. So I think I should refrain from commenting on that too much.
Okay. On that note, that's all the time we have here on Defacto Review. Thanks for watching us on MMB World. We'll see you next time on next week here on MMB World.
You go to our jargaldefacto.com and subscribe our newspapers, the De Facto Gazeta, which will include this comment. and other interesting information for you. Thank you very much for having this time with us. See you next week.